Loss comes in many forms, and usually in unexpected ways. It can be devastating, leaving you facing an uphill struggle to go on with life without someone you thought would always be there. But life does go on, and even in the deepest despair, we can find hope. Welcome to Grief Relief with your hosts, Drs. Gloria and Heidi Horsley, brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation, helping people find hope after loss. And now here's Dr. Gloria and Dr. Heidi.
Welcome to our show today. I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. My co-host, Dr. Heidi Horsley, is not with us today because she's had a family emergency, but she'll be with us again next week. I know that Heidi would agree with me that having a show today on men, women, and grief is a great idea to have a male on as my co-host. So it kind of works out on the show today. And I have got a fabulous co-host. I've got Alan Pedersen, and Alan is an internationally known figure, a singer and songwriter, and he travels around the United States in a band filled with all sorts of wonderful names of people, kids who have passed away, and he goes around the United States and sings and helps families. And this is a man who's really found a way to transform his grief. He lost his daughter Ashley many years ago in an automobile accident, and he has taken that experience and really helped the world with the beautiful music and the beautiful spirit that he does. So Alan's my co-host today, and I'm excited to have you on as my co-host, and I know Heidi wishes she was here with us.
You know, I'm excited to be here. I've gotten to co-host a couple of programs in place of Heidi, and I know I'm not a replacement, but I'm doing the best I can. But thank you. I appreciate it very much. It's been an honor to be with you. And today our subject is, well, it's not an easy topic to talk about today, but I think a very important one in men and women, and how we all grieve uniquely, but certainly men and women grieve uniquely. And when they're in a relationship, boy, it can get dicey and interesting, can't it?
Absolutely, it can. And we have got a couple of guests that I know are dear to your heart and
Absolutely.
are dear to mine. And Darcie Sims and her husband Tony. And Tony's a real man's man, Alan.
I know he is. He's like a guy's guy, like we like to say, and I'm like sort of a guy's guy. He was off fighting the war. I was writing poems and songs about the war. So he's got a unique perspective because he was in that environment, and to share his grief from that perspective is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and then his wife is a power-packed woman, and watch out. So she goes all around the United States and the world speaking on grief and loss and recovery, and she is really a sought-after person. And they also run their own grief organization, Grief Inc. So, and Darcie's a published author, and we'll be talking about one of her books, and just some great information on men and women and grief and loss. And I know for you folks out there, it is tough. If you've had a loss in your family, sometimes it's tough on those relationships. Yeah. So let's see if we can pick these people's brains a little bit and find out some things that will help you out. Yeah. So welcome to the show.
Welcome. Both
Thank
of you.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Great to have you on, Darcie and Tony. Well, Tony, tell us about Big A.
Well, he was a problem from the day he was born.
Yeah.
He was born with some birth defects, and then later on had more deadly things happening that we didn't really know what they were, and we had to go through lots of physicians before we found one that knew what he really was suffering from, and that took an enormous amount of work and some really smart people. We found a physician that was smart enough to say he didn't know what was going on, but he was going to find out.
You know, it's interesting to me that you start with that, because I'll tell you something, and Alan, maybe you'll find this true too. Men want to find people to figure it out, and to work it out, and to find out what's going on. They want to do something. And this guy, you were a fighter pilot, right?
I was a bomber radar navigator.
Okay, so. Navigator, whatever, and you were in the service, and so you were a guy that was going to try to figure out, you know, what's going on. And isn't that one of the things that we know about men?
We fix things.
Yeah,
we
you want to fix things.
Yeah,
People,
we really
do. Somebody was telling me that their husband bricked up their whole yard after their daughter died. So I think that Heidi and I sometimes say that men grieve shoulder to shoulder, and women like to grieve face to face. What's your take on that, Darcie?
Well, I think that's probably true. We obviously know that men and women are different physiologically and all of those things, because we all read the books about men and women are different.
Those hormones?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, men are from Mars.
But
and all
I think
that, yeah.
people expect different things from men and women, and that's very cultural. And we are kind of products of the culture. Women in our culture, we tend to gather. We tend to talk. We tend to share. Men tend to answer in one-word questions. And if they get together at all, it's to talk about the sports or have a beer. And it's very short. So the differences between the two of us were pronounced even while we battled Big A's final illness. And after his death, it really fell apart.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think, and Tony, I'd like to get your take on this a little bit too. I think because men do fix things, and I'm sure when Big A was sick, you were trying to fix that, both of you. And then as you went into grief, we want to fix things and find the strategy. We have strategies, and grief isn't something you can put on an Excel spreadsheet and it just all comes out. Talk a little bit about, you know, in my early days of grief, my friends just couldn't talk with me about it. And I wasn't in a military setting. What was it like for you early in grief where you had to be in great pain, yet you were probably in a world where you really couldn't express that? How difficult was that for you?
Doubly involved there was the fact that we were in an environment, because our son was sick, we were able to be at a location where we could get services for him. And shortly after he died, the reason for our being there was no longer there. So we immediately, within 3 months, we were on orders to move to another location back to the airplane. So we got there and we had no history, and we had no one who was a close friend. We also had no one with whom to speak any of this with. And of course, guys don't talk to each other anyway, and military people talk about the mission and details and other things, but not about personal feelings or those kinds of issues. And so, and in addition to that, I was also a combat crew member. So we had different stresses and different pushes about what we did and how we talked about things. So there was no opportunity to talk to anyone outside of the house. And when I got home, it wasn't ever the right time to talk to my wife about it. So it was a stressful environment.
Yeah. And Darcie, how about for you?
Well, in the military, you become a part of a machine. And I grew up in it, gave birth to it. Our daughter was born on Veterans Day. She became an Air Force officer. This was a world I knew. The world of having a child die was a world I didn't know anything about. But I knew that as a good military wife, I was to be supportive of my husband. I was to be supportive of the mission. We were still at war, be supportive of it. There were no problems in our home. And when we left the front door every day, we were fine. There were no support groups, no opportunities to go to any. It would have literally destroyed his career. So we went silent. I have no idea how he got up every morning and went and flew missions. I have no idea. I at least got to stay in the house and cry if I needed to. But when he came home, the mask went down and we were both fine.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things that I've seen in my own relationship and with men and women is that you kind of fight in the morning early on, not fighting with your husband, but fighting yourself to say, okay, I'm going to make this day a good day. And then maybe your partner is saying, this is a bad day for me. And all of a sudden you're struggling to be at this level and they're at a totally different level. Did you find that out?
I think so too. You know, I think when you're married, you always want it to be like the old Sonny and Cher song, "I Got You, Babe." Right. And then you're going through grief, and you wake up one morning and you go, "I don't get you, babe. I don't get you at all." And did you come to that? I'm sure you. Did it fall apart, get back together? Obviously, you're together today, and you're doing wonderful work.
But see how far apart we're sitting?
Yes. But in the next couple minutes, could you just tell us how it all fell apart and how you put it all back together? How did that happen?
Well, of course we can. I bought the fairy tale that when you get married, you would do everything together, hold hands, handle all adversities. And we looked at each other and went, who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you? But I looked in the mirror. I didn't know who I was, let alone who he was. And I thought, well, I know how to do this. I had no idea. There were no books, no support groups. There was no help whatsoever. So I'm looking to him for support. He didn't look at me at all. And that was the end of that kind of a relationship. We hurt so much apart. We couldn't help each other. And once you go silent, it was easier to stay silent, wasn't it?
Pretty much. And I didn't have a whole lot of things to say about emotional things anyway, because I had learned how to stuff it. And especially when you're working in a military environment, you know, where you have a crew member die, you go out and fight, win the next hill or take the next mission. That's what you do. And you learn to compartmentalize it for your own safety.
Well, yeah, I think I love that, compartmentalize for your own safety, because I'm hearing this, what you're saying right now, and I'm thinking of our audience out there, and I'm thinking, these people are talking about this in military, but I'm identifying with this. I mean, we're moving around a lot in the United States today. We don't have those families sitting there for us. You just don't have to be military to be moving away from everybody. And we don't necessarily have those support systems that we've had available. We do have other things going on today, and I know we've all gotten to know each other through the Compassionate Friends. So there, those hopefully some more support groups. But what about this women and men thing? I want to take, we have Open to Hope Facebook, and we hope you'll visit us on our Facebook site at Open to Hope, because we have some people that knew that Darcie and Tony were going to be on, and we asked them if they'd give us some questions on Facebook. And here's some questions for you guys from the people that are sitting out there now wondering about these relationships.
Let's hope we can answer them.
Yeah. If I can't, it's your fault.
Okay.
So we've got one from Joan, and she says, my husband won't talk about our baby's death. How do I get him to talk? Wow. How do you get your husband to talk about the baby's death?
I don't have a clue, because I was never successful.
Sorry, Joan, no clue.
Sorry, Joan. I had to learn that Tony would talk to me in his own time and in his own way. And patience is not one of my long suits. But if I wanted the relationship to stay, I had to wait till he was ready.
Don't you think that, and I think as men, one of the common things I hear from men, common complaints is, one is we don't want to go to a support group and sit in a circle and talk to a bunch of women. And the second thing is, why isn't it okay for us to just not talk when we don't feel like talking? And I sometimes wonder if we don't, you know, we're grieving differently and we don't want to talk, or maybe we go out to the garage and scream. That's how we talk. I sometimes think if we would understand that talking doesn't always mean you're grieving more or less. Sometimes you're quiet. But I think we have to, you talk about the gift of tolerance, Darcie. When we give each other the freedom to grieve the way we want to, it really helps in that case. Don't you think so?
Alan, if I had learned my own words 25 years earlier than I did, we would have had a much different and much less painful course. I, of course, am a talker. Tony is also a talker. We had nothing to say to each other. He needed to talk about a bombing mission, and I'm saying, wait a minute, what happened here? We had 2 kids, now we have 1. And I would say, let's share. And he is out the door. He's gone.
But I went to the wood hobby shop and I built a headboard.
All right, yes.
And I took wood and I beat it into submission and made furniture, because I could take that energy and that drive and do something with it. And I could not fix the environment, but I could fix something. We still have that headboard, and it still works.
But we couldn't get it up the stairs from the basement because it wouldn't go around the corner, so we had to disassemble it and then rebuild it in the bedroom.
That was good to have
it was just therapy.
Another thing to rebuild. You know, Abel Keogh is an author for Open to Hope, and he's just actually written a book about widowers, being a widower. He just sent it to me, and his wife, who was pregnant, actually shot herself. And Abel had looked at an old house with his wife, run down while she was still living, and was going to buy it, and he went ahead and bought it, and his friends came in and helped him rebuild that house for 2 years.
Wow.
And, you know, so, you know, building and doing and working may be a way. And, you know, I think young boys also, I know if you see them with grief and loss, oftentimes Heidi and I worked with the 9/11 families, firemen families, and it was better to go play a game of basketball with them, or a game, if you wanted to get involved with the guys. You know, go do something. Well, we've got another question from Randy. Randy says, I'm going to a support group and I can't get my wife to go.
Whoa.
Any suggestions?
Well, that's uncommon, because usually it's the other way around. But you might try the same thing I did when I was going to support groups with my spouse, dragged along, and I ended up being the only man there. Well, he would drop her off at those support groups and drive away. So I would go out and make sure he parked.
You were monitoring the parking lot trolling for men.
And dragged them in, telling them that, please don't make me be alone in here with all these women. And so then they would start to come in, and after a while, it became more comfortable for people to come. And so by doing that, they had their own life where they could come in, and we started out by working separately and then together, and that was a more comfortable format. And then later on, there was more spontaneous interaction, which was, I thought, the success of the program. That they'd actually come and been trained in how to share.
We had better cookies on our side.
That's true.
So they would sneak over during coffee break. But you know, not everybody, man or women, finds talking helpful. Yeah. I think we just assume that if it helps me, it's going to help the people I love the most. So sometimes we just have to literally give that gift of tolerance and say, I'm going to a support group tonight. I'd like you to come, but if not, I respect. I don't have to understand, but I'll respect the way you're grieving too. We just have to literally give each other that space to figure it out on our own, and then we'll figure it out together.
And also, go yourself. Don't let the other person not going be your excuse for not going.
Absolutely.
I mean, do it yourself and teach the world, as they say. Well, the next person is Richard, and he says, my wife is crying all the time, and I find it difficult to cry. Is there something wrong with me? Well, I want to take this from Tony first, because Darcie's written a book on crying, and we're going to have, the Crying Handbook. Hold that still so they can get a camera. Not in front of your face, down. Yeah, okay. The Crying Handbook Darcie has written. But Tony, I want to ask you to answer that question first, because we don't want to get all the answers from Darcie.
I don't cry. But I've learned a little bit about crying from the process of putting this book together.
Say that again.
I learned some of it.
That was it. We've reached a major breakthrough on this television
We have. All right, Alan.
I did other things. I went out and I built that headboard. I put more motion into the emotion. I went out and exercised. I went and pounded something. I was running in those days. I got over that. But but I would go out and exercise, and found out these many years later that exercise and that use of energy, and then the sweat that was earned from that, was basically my version of crying. So I got the same kind of relief from doing that she got from crying, and so we were both being served, but at that time neither one of us knew why.
I love that. Darcie, do you want to make a comment about crying?
I would get so mad at him because I'm a weeper and a wailer, professional crier, could be hired out.
That's true.
And I'm sobbing, just buckets, and he's going, I'm going for a run. I said, sure, fine, go ahead. I misinterpreted his lack of tears for lack of love, for lack of care. And boy, did we get, no, let me say it right, did I get wicked. I accused him of not loving. I once sat him down in a chair and said, just cry. Can you think of something sad? And I said, sit, you're not moving till you cry.
Right.
And how stupid for me to say to a man whose son has died, can you think of something sad? And he said, I'm trying. I finally gave up. Yeah. And once I gave up making him do it my way, or each of us do it one way, I wish I'd written that book 25 years earlier. It would have spared a lot of words.
Yeah, I got a good friend who literally, and this is before he had this great information, he put a punching bag out in his garage, and he said he was in our grief support group too, but he said every time I would go out there and punch that bag and wear myself out, I felt better.
Right.
And so we called it punching bag therapy that he brought to our support group. And so maybe for some people, Gloria, that can help them.
Yeah.
Just go take
so
a jog.
Richard, don't worry about the fact that you're not crying. He's worried about that fact. There's also some hormonal issues connected with this. Women produce oxytocin, which is for milk letdown for women, and that is a hormone that also helps people be more accessible to crying. So there are some hormonal aspects, Richard. And then we've got one from Bob. He says, it's been 3 months since my daughter was killed. My wife's having difficulty with intimacy. Can you help me? Wow.
Well, let's you all take that one there.
All right, go for it.
Right up there.
You go ahead. I'll just sit right over here, and we'll just talk about that. Go for it.
the stress of having someone die, and especially having a child die, is not something you're going to be able to stuff for any period of time and do it successfully, and you certainly can't turn it on and turn it off. And it's going to take a while for your spouse to get used to the new person they are, you to get used to the new person that you are, and you really are a new person, a different person, not necessarily better or worse, but you're different. And then when you're done getting that sorted out, which may take a while, you have to do something else. You have to find a way for this new person here and this new person here to get together again, because you have to basically start the relationship from the new place and put it back together, and it will never be the same, but it hopefully will be successful. And that's probably going to take more than 3 months. And if you don't do the grief work on the way, it's going to take a lot longer.
And Darcie, what do we women want from these men when we've had a loss? We want to be
I want to be comforted. I want to be cuddled. I want you to understand that I am not interested. I felt so guilty. How could I be having any kind of pleasure, even a moment of pleasure, when my kid is dead? And I know that he was just seeking comfort. We started all over again, just learning to hold hands, just learning to have a look between each other. It wasn't easy, and it did not happen overnight. Lots of stumbling, but you know, you loved each other once. We finally agreed that if we couldn't make it, we gave ourselves a year, literally wrote a contract, put it on a refrigerator, and said, we're going to struggle for a year together. If we can't make it at the end of the year, then we'll get a divorce, because two squirrels couldn't figure it out. I did not want to get a divorce because our son had died. That was another loss I was not willing to have immediately. We fought for our marriage.
All right. Well, that takes us to another question. Let me see. I was looking at this. It's from Judy. She said, we went to therapy today, and our therapist cautioned us that we were at high risk for divorce. We have heard that there's over a 90% divorce rate.
Get a new therapist. Perhaps I shouldn't have said that, sorry.
Well, it's just not true, Darcie. It's just that those statistics just aren't true that get bandied about. They're a big myth. Isn't that right?
It is, and how awful to think that we're doomed before you even begin. Let's just, from the funeral, just go right over to the divorce court and call it an end. It would have been easier.
You know, we could go on with this show forever and ever. Absolutely. Fabulous talking about this, but it's time for us to close, and Alan is going to sing for us, closing our show. And tell us about the song you're going to sing.
It's a song inspired by Darcie, and something that she talks about, something very important to her family, called Thanks for the Little While.
All right, and that's what kind of how she ends all our talks too, isn't it? Thanks for the little while. Yep. I love it. So, Alan, thank you for doing that, and thank you guys for being on the show. It's been fabulous, and thank you for being my co-host.
I've enjoyed it.
You guys are awesome. Well, thank you so much, and thanks for watching the show today. It's been just great talking about this topic. I think it's an important topic, and we're hoping that you'll visit us at Facebook and all the things that we do at Open to Hope. We've got wonderful authors and wonderful writers, and we have over 5,000 articles online for you. Everything's tagged for content. You can look at spouse loss, and so take care of yourself and lean on our hope until you find your own if you've lost your hope. And take care.
Well, I cursed God and I cursed fate. I told everyone I couldn't wait till I could go. It turned me inside out and upside down. I could barely breathe or get around. It hurt me so. It took some time, but one day I knew I'd spend the rest of my life telling the world about you. Thanks for the hugs and all the kisses and your sweet laughter everybody misses. Thanks for the joy and the memories. I still cry, 'cause it ain't easy But then again I have to smile. Thanks for the little while. Well, I have learned it's up to me to give you a voice for the world to see. So that's what I do. Your love has been my guiding light, so I hold on to it tight. It helps me through. But I had to let my anger go, so I could let all my love for you show. Thanks for the hugs and all the kisses, and your sweet laughter everybody misses. Thanks for the joy and the memories. I still cry, 'cause it ain't easy. But then again I have to smile. Thanks for the little while. I had so much more love to give. You had so much more life to live. And in my dreams, that's just how it would be. Our story wasn't long enough, but every page was filled with love. And you will always be a part of me. So I won't let tomorrow take away all the beauty we shared yesterday. Thanks for the hugs and your sweet kisses.
This has been Grief Relief, hosted by the mother-daughter team of Dr. Gloria and Dr. Heidi Horsley. This show's been brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation, helping people find hope after loss. Be sure to visit Dr. Gloria and Dr. Heidi at opentohope.com, where you can listen to radio programs, watch past episodes of Grief Relief, read articles, and view books. You can also join them on Twitter and Facebook and put your events on their international calendar. Thanks for watching, and remember, others have been there and made it, and you can too.